At the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in Los Angeles, we know you're more than just a student. You're a catalyst for change and an advocate for those in need. And we believe you deserve more. So your faculty are accomplished professionals. Your classroom is the real world. And the support you need is available when you need it. You're more than a student. Get more from your education. Learn more about the Chicago School's Los Angeles campus today at thechicagoschool.edu.
Amazon is now hiring near you. We're looking for team members who know that delivering important packages is important work. Ready to work hard to make someone's every day? Ready for benefits and flexible shifts? Immediate hourly roles are available at amazon.com/apply. That's amazon.com/apply. Amazon is an equal opportunity employer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a closer look. Jeffrey Epstein's Core 4. So tonight's going to be episode 1 of a 5-part series where we begin to explore Jeffrey Epstein's Core 4. And when I say the Core 4, I mean the 4 ladies that were acting as lieutenants underneath him and Ghislaine Maxwell. These ladies are Sarah Kellen Vickers, Adriana Ross, Leslie Groff, and Nadia Marcinkova. We're going to explore each and every one of them by giving each and every one of them their own episode. Tonight, we're going to start by having an overview of just exactly who it is that we're talking about. And we're going to start here for the new listeners of the podcast and for those who might not be up to date on exactly who we're talking about. So we're going to start by profiling the whole entire operation that these 4 were in charge of, what they were doing, what their tasks were, etc., etc. And to do that, we're going to read through a New York Times article from August of 2019. And this article gets in the weeds of just exactly what these ladies are accused of in court documents. Now, I had a lot of people ask for an episode about Sarah Kellen Vickers, and that's certainly occurring. But I had to start here, so we start at the very beginning of the story. As you all know, if you've been listening to the podcast from the beginning or for any amount of time, you know I'm a stickler about context. I want to make sure we have the whole story, the right story, and we're not getting BS nonsense information. So I think it's important that we always start at the very beginning if we can, and we build from there. So that's what we're going to do. And instead of just being a one-off episode like I was talking about with some listeners on Twitter, I decided to make it a whole entire 5-part series. So without more to say on that, let's just jump right into the article and get an overview on just exactly who we're going to be profiling in this new series. This is, like I said, an article from the New York Times, and the headline is, How a Ring of Women Allegedly Recruited Girls for Jeffrey Epstein. The authors of the article are Amy Julia Harris, Francis Robles, Mike Baker, and William K. Rashbaum. This article was released by the New York Times on August 29th, 2019. Now remember, I didn't start this podcast really until October. So all of these articles previously, we never got to on the podcast. So when I was doing my research into the Sarah Kellen episode, and I stumbled across this one that I had read a while back, but I had never archived for some reason, I thought that this would be a great place to start, because as much as I get on top of legacy media and call them out when they're nonsensical for their BS, well, the New York Times did a really good job with this article profiling who these ladies are. So that's why we're starting here, and that's why we're going to read this article tonight. Haley Robson was a 16-year-old South Florida high school student when an acquaintance from school approached her at a local pool with an intriguing offer. Did she want to make extra money giving massages to a billionaire pedophile in Palm Beach? She agreed. When Jeffrey Epstein tried to grope her while she was giving him a massage wearing nothing but a thong, she brushed his hand away, Miss Robson said in a 2009 deposition for a civil case. But she continued to visit Mr. Epstein's mansion dozens more times in a lucrative new role, a recruiter of other teenage girls from her school. Now, this is one of those situations where it's delicate, in my opinion. Now, this is another girl who is only 16 years old who has been recruited into this disgusting world of Jeffrey Epstein's. And now she's 16 and she's going back to school and recruiting other young girls to come and be a part of this. This is where I'm torn. How do you punish somebody that's only 16 that was engaging in this? I'm not really capable and smart enough legally to even begin to try and break that down, right? Now, there has to be some sort of punishment. You can't get away with helping out a pedophile, but what is that punishment? I guess that's a question I'm asking the audience. I really don't, for once, I don't have an opinion on that. I really don't know where to start when it comes to people like Haley Robson. I don't know what sort of punishment somebody like that should be looking at. What do you folks out there think? Send me some emails on that so I can get a feel for what you folks think, because one of the only times I can tell you in this case, I really don't have a strong opinion one way or the other, because I guess I'm not well versed enough in that part of the law to understand how the penalties can be administered. Now, I definitely have some empathy for her, no doubt about it, being recruited at that young of an age and then thrust into a role of where you can make money by bringing other girls there. She's just a kid. So it's definitely delicate. Let me know what you think out there. I didn't have to convince them, she said in a deposition. I proposed to them. They took it. Again, of course they did. Young girls that are from poor backgrounds, that have never really had anything. Somebody's offering them $200, $300 to come give some old creepy guy a massage. They're not thinking they're going there to get molested. They're not going there as prostitutes. There's nothing, first of all, no such thing as a child prostitute, but that's not why they're going there. They were going over there thinking they were going to make a quick $200, give this dude a massage, and be done with their day and be on to the mall to buy a new pair of shoes or whatever it may be. Instead, they would get there, and it would be a whole different set of circumstances. After Mr. Epstein's suicide, allegedly, in a Manhattan jail cell in early August, federal authorities have refocused their investigation on more than half dozen employees, girlfriends, and associates whom prosecutors say he relied on to feed his insatiable appetite for girls. According to two people with knowledge of the inquiry, Miss Robson, now 33, is among them. Again, definitely a delicate situation with Miss Robson. I'm not going to do a deep dive into her right this second. She is definitely on the radar, but like I said, it's a delicate situation with her, and also, honestly, with Nadia Marcinkova. And we'll get to that when I profile her. She had a bigger role than Haley Robson, a much more public role, so we're doing a deep dive on Marcinkova. But again, I'm torn on the whole situation because of the circumstances surrounding it. A review by the New York Times of lawsuits, unsealed court records, and depositions, along with new interviews, offers disturbing allegations about this small cadre of women who helped Mr. Epstein lure girls into his orbit and manage the logistics of his encounters with them. Again, this is such an important part of the story. This whole operation could not have taken place, folks, without the help of the Core Four. And that's why it's very important that we get to the bottom of it. It's very important that they answer questions. It's very important that the prosecutors pursue this very, very, very aggressively. The urgency of the investigation into Mr. Epstein's associates was underscored on Tuesday when about 24 women offered searing accounts of how he had sexually abused them before a packed courtroom in Manhattan. The judge overseeing the case had invited the women to speak at a hearing to dismiss the indictment against Mr. Epstein in light of his death. Again, another horrible decision. He should have been tried. These crimes are so heinous. He should have been tried for these crimes in death even though he couldn't be there, he should have been tried in death for these crimes. That's how horrible they were. Why not? Why couldn't we have done that? Make an exception, write a new law. They love writing new laws. Well, write a new law for something that's worthwhile for once. Several of the women implored federal prosecutors to continue investigating the women in Mr. Epstein's inner circle. Well, if the prosecutors don't want to do it, we'll do it here on the Jeffrey Epstein Show. And I know that other content providers and content creators are doing the same thing. Like my good friends over at The Prince and the Perv. They're doing great work over there. If you're not subscribing to their podcast yet, get on it. My two pals from Australia are leaving no rock unturned in this case. So you definitely want to check out their work. Jeffrey is no longer here, and the women that helped him are, said Teresa Helm, who said she was recruited into Mr. Epstein's world 17 years ago. They definitely need to be held accountable for helping him, helping themselves, helping one another carry on this huge, almost like system. That's exactly what it is. Miss Helm is not wrong. One of the survivors speaking out, Miss Helm is not wrong. This is your prototypical criminal organization built exactly like the mafia, with levels of insulation, with protection for those that are in leadership roles, and the shit rolls downhill, right? We see it all the time with these criminal investigations, and the only way the people at the top get popped is when you bring in the lower level individuals, the capos, the lieutenants, the street dealers, the street bosses. You bring them in, you round them up, and you put them to the question, and they start ratting. And that's what we need to start seeing here. And that is why we're doing this right now at the time we're doing it. Because it's very important that the prosecutors understand that the people demand action. Just like we demanded action with Weinstein, we demand action with these sick people as well. The United States Attorney in Manhattan, Jeffrey Berman, whose office brought the charges against Mr. Epstein, said after his suicide that the investigation into the sex trafficking conspiracy was not finished and prosecutors were committed to standing up for the brave young women Mr. Epstein had abused. Well, that's all nice and all, and you know it's awesome that you can say that, and it's great for you to claim that that's what's going to occur. But if you really want to stand up for these girls, if you really want to stand up for the survivors, and believe me, I've heard it from their own mouths, if you really want to stand up for them, you need to prosecute. You need to go after these people with the same gusto that you go after drug dealers, with the same gusto you go after people that are involved in, money crimes. This is such a heinous operation that these people were a part of, and the fact that nobody has been arrested in the inner circle, how can you possibly get up there and blow those words out of your mouth knowing that they're wind? Mr. Berman, I implore you, sir, to do the right thing. But Mr. Epstein is one of the women under scrutiny, Mr. Epstein's one-time girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, and co-conspirator, has been accused in several well-publicized lawsuits of overseeing efforts to procure girls and young women for him, a charge she has firmly denied. Yeah, right. What'd you call him, Ghislaine? Nubiles, huh? That's what you're cruising Central Park for, huh? Nubiles? You sick, deranged woman. But Mr. Epstein is also accused in civil suits of relying on an organized network of underlings, those who train girls how to sexually pleasure him, office assistants who booked cars and travel, and recruiters who ensured he always had a fresh supply of teenage girls at the ready. Just think about that statement. Always had a fresh supply of teenage girls at the ready. Now, for a moment, forget that we were talking about human beings here, okay? Forget we were talking about people being trafficked. And let's think about this as a drug organization. He relied on let's say his name was Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar relied on an organized network of underlings, those who, instead of trained girls, manufactured the drugs, instead of how to sexually pleasure him, those who transported the drugs, office assistants who booked cars and travel, that would be his other underlings that worked in a front office that were in charge of the travel for all of the drug dealers, and recruiters who ensured he always had a fresh supply of teenage girls at the ready. Okay, if we're talking about in drug cartel terms, those would be the people that would make sure that everything was happening correctly on the streets, making sure the drugs were getting to the places they needed to get to. So when you see that analogy, how is it any different? The only thing different is one is involved in selling drugs and the other was involved in moving human flesh. Now, I find selling drugs at that level to be a problem. There's no doubt. But I find it even more horrendous that a human trafficking ring is not being given the same look that a drug trafficking ring was given. How much money did they have on El Chapo's head? Again, don't get me wrong. He was a bad man. He was an evil man who was responsible for untold deaths. And there's no doubt that they should have went after him the way they did. My point is, though, why don't they go after Epstein's operation and other trafficking operations with the same zeal? Especially considering when you break it down and look at it the way I just broke it down for you, there's no difference. It's the same exact thing here, folks. None of Mr. Epstein's associates have been charged or named as co-conspirators in Manhattan, but federal authorities are eyeing possible charges that include sex trafficking and sex trafficking conspiracy, the two people with knowledge of the investigation said. And again, I hate beating a dead horse, and I know a lot of you out there are probably sick of hearing about RICO, but this is right here. This is textbook RICO. Textbook RICO, especially considering the human trafficking aspect has been added to the RICO statutes. I just don't understand. If Berman was serious and if the prosecution was serious, this is the route they would be taking, because it gives them great latitude to really investigate everybody who has ever received a single dime from Jeffrey Epstein. 4 women were apparently so instrumental to Mr. Epstein's operation that they were named as possible co-conspirators and were granted immunity from prosecution in a widely criticized plea bargain Mr. Epstein struck with federal prosecutors in Florida more than a decade ago. That deal allowed Mr. Epstein to plead guilty to state charges and to spend 13 months in a county jail rather than face a federal sex trafficking indictment. You know what's so laughable about that? The 2 guards are facing more jail time than Jeffrey Epstein ever did. I know people that have been arrested for illegal gambling charges, folks, that have done 7 years. Do you know why? Because they got slapped with a RICO charge. Yet these people, 13 months, no jail time, immunity deals. It's like Oprah. You get an immunity deal. You get an immunity deal. You get an immunity deal. Everybody's getting immunity deals. Meanwhile, nobody is getting justice. The 4 women, Sarah Kellen, Leslie Groff, Adriana Ross, and Nadia Marcinkova, could still be subject to criminal charges in Manhattan. The United States Attorney's Office has said it is not bound by the Florida Agreement. Bing, bang, boom. Not bound by the Florida Agreement. Where are the charges? There is no excuse for there not to be charges. There is no excuse for these ladies not to be brought in at the very least and put to the question. It says it right here, plain as day. The U.S. Attorney's Office, United States Attorney's Office has said it is not bound by the Florida Agreement. So what is stopping you, Mr. Berman? I implore you to do your job, sir. The boss. 3 women have alleged in lawsuits that Mr. Epstein's sex trafficking ring operated as a hierarchy, with the financier, pedophile, and Miss Maxwell at the top. I'm not, when I'm telling you how I look at this organization, it's because of the conversations I've had with people who have been involved with Jeffrey Epstein, people who have been abused by Jeffrey Epstein. This isn't just, at this point, this isn't theory, folks. This is fact, okay? This whole thing was being operated as a criminal enterprise with leaders, people in leadership roles, and then underlings. And there is no disputing that fact at this point. And that alone is enough for the authorities to go after them. But yet here we are. She orchestrated the whole thing for Jeffrey, Sarah Ransom, who sued Miss Maxwell and other associates in 2017, said in an interview. Miss Maxwell, the daughter of the British publishing magnate Robert Maxwell, was Mr. Epstein's longtime companion, managing his homes and introducing him to many of the politicians, celebrities, and dignitaries who became fixtures within his social circle. All part of the plan. Maxwell was born for this. She was born for Cloak and Dagger. The people she grew up around, folks, what do you think? They were the same kind of people you and I grew up around? They were not. They were not. She was sent over here to make sure that Epstein was kept in line, and so that Epstein would have access to all of these elites. She was the happy face put on Epstein, all right? And she was the reason he was able to finagle himself into these circles, to be around all of these rich people, to have access to these rich people. It was all because of Ghislaine Maxwell and her contacts. And where do you think those contacts came from, folks? Her pops, all right? And where do you think her pops' contacts came from? Well, wouldn't it be funny to find out that he was part of the intelligence community? Boy, isn't that shocking. They were just like partners in business, Janus Banasiak, Mr. Epstein's house manager, said in a deposition. Mr. Epstein's butler, Alfredo Rodriguez, described Miss Maxwell in a deposition as the boss. Yeah, she was the boss. Okay? Her and Jeffrey Epstein were on legal footing. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't bullying her around. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't telling her what to do. They were on equal footing, and he understood that. He understood that he was, at the end of the day, beholden to Ghislaine Maxwell almost. Miss Maxwell has denied she trafficked girls. Neither Miss Maxwell nor her lawyers responded to requests for interviews for this article. Of course not. They don't want to go on record. They know the scope. They know the score. They know the deal. They know that if they go on record, it's going to be big trouble. If Ghislaine Maxwell comes in, forget it. She's ratting too. And right now, she's the plum. Her and Prince Andrew are the two plum prizes, and the heat is certainly on. But Mr. Epstein's accusers contend in court papers that Miss Maxwell managed the network of recruiters and helped devise the playbook for how to lure young women into Mr. Epstein's web. Recruiters were allegedly told to target young, financially desperate women and to promise them help furthering their education and careers, these civil complaints said. Virginia Roberts said in a deposition that she was 16 when she met Miss Maxwell and was recruited as a masseuse. She said she remembered Miss Maxwell's sales pitch. If she gave a wealthy man a massage, a whole world of opportunity would open up to her. If the guy likes you, then it will work out for you, Miss Roberts. It will work out for you. Miss Roberts, in a deposition, recalled Miss Maxwell telling her, "You'll travel, you'll make good money, you'll be educated." So you think at 16 years old, Virginia Roberts, she didn't come from money. She wasn't, from some rich family or anything like that. And she's offered this incredible opportunity. Do you really think that in her mind, she's thinking that this well-spoken British lady who's obviously very rich and runs with obviously very rich people is going to be somebody that's going to abuse her or hurt her? Or do you think she's thinking, man, this is a great opportunity. I'm going to make some big money. I'm going to get trained how to be a masseuse. I'll get an education. This is my chance. That's exactly what she was thinking, folks. It wasn't like she went into this with open eyes. She was a young girl, 16 years old. Think back to when you were 16, how easily you could have been manipulated into a situation like this. Miss Roberts took the job. Soon she said she became a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein, not only providing sexual favors to him, but also to some of his acquaintances, including politicians and prominent businessmen. My whole life revolved around just pleasing these men and keeping Ghislaine and Jeffrey happy, she said in the deposition. Their whole entire lives revolved around sex. And we've heard that from numerous girls at this point. Numerous girls about how Jeffrey Epstein had to have quote-unquote massages 3 or 4 times a day. How Ghislaine was also addicted to this sort of lifestyle. Sick, folks. We're dealing with some very sick people here. All right, now into the meat of the article. Now we're going to talk about the lieutenant. Just below Miss Maxwell in the chain of command was Miss Kellen, another high-ranking employee who has been accused in multiple lawsuits of scheduling girls for sex sessions with Mr. Epstein in his Palm Beach mansion. She was called the lieutenant in one lawsuit. David Rogers, Mr. Epstein's pilot, said in a deposition that Miss Kellen was like an assistant to Ghislaine. from what I have heard and from what people have told me who are close to the case, she was being groomed for Ghislaine's type of position so that she could step in and take over if Ghislaine had other matters at hand. She was the number one underling underneath Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Very important part of what was going on here, folks. Sarah Kellen Vickers, who now is married to ex-NASCAR race car driver Brian Vickers, is such a huge part of this story. And we had several requests for a profile on her. And that's the main catalyst why we're doing this whole new series here. So we're going to make sure that we profile her correctly, and remember that she is a very important piece to this puzzle. Miss Kellen kept the names and numbers of all the girls who gave Mr. Epstein erotic massages, according to Palm Beach police reports and Miss Robson's deposition. She would call them whenever Mr. Epstein was in town, asking the girls if they were ready to work, the reports and Miss Robson said. Now, remember, folks, it's not just a report now, or an anonymous source, or sources said. Miss Robson is saying this directly. Miss Robson is saying that Kellen was surprising. She was providing these young girls for Jeffrey Epstein. She was the one making the phone call. She was the one bringing them over. She is a co-conspirator. How is she not being questioned by the FBI right now? How hasn't Mr. Berman come after her with everything he has? It makes me question the prosecution. She saw herself as the boss, said Spencer T. Coven, a West Palm Beach lawyer who represented several accusers in lawsuits. Sarah was really running that organization, bringing girls and getting them in and out of the Palm Beach home. How much more damning does it have to be? How much more damning does it have to be for us to see some justice in this case? For somebody to show up and arrest one of these people? Miss Kellen, who sometimes goes by Sarah Kensington or Sarah Vickers, did not respond to requests for an interview. Her lawyers also did not respond to requests for comment. Multiple girls told Palm Beach detectives that when they arrived at Mr. Epstein's mansion, Miss Kellen would escort them upstairs to Mr. Epstein's bedroom and lay out the massage table with the various oils and lotions that they were to use on him, according to police reports. So this lady, who is protected under that draconian, disgusting immunity deal, not only made the phone calls, not only called the girls and rounded them up for Epstein, but she would set the massage table up for him with all the sick, disgusting sex toys and lotions and everything that this deviant liked. This woman, Sarah Kellen Vickers, needs to be questioned by the authorities. And she also needs to be talked about more in the media. There needs to be more of a focus spent on these so-called co-conspirators that we keep hearing about. The media keeps talking about them, but they are not running articles. They're not doing exposés. They're not having a 35 or 40-minute discussion about who these women are and what their roles were in this case. This is important stuff, folks. This is very important to the case. What this does is it shows that this is a criminal enterprise. What this shows is that this definitely deserves to be slapped with every single RICO charge they can imagine, and the whole entire house of cards needs to be pulled down around their ears. In an interview, Miss Ransom said Miss Kellen and Miss Maxwell also gave her tips on how to give Epstein erotic massages, including how to rub his feet and best satisfy him sexually. It was Ghislaine and Sarah Kellen that showed me how to please Jeffrey, Miss Ransom said. The assistants. So that is the beginning of who Sarah Kellen Vickers is. Now, we did the 5 fast facts on who she is. We have that little bit of a profile in this overview of who she is. And now going forward in our second episode of this series, we're going to profile her in a deep dive, and we're going to do a 35 minute episode just on who Sarah Kellen Vickers is. And we're going to do one of those for each one of these ladies that we talk about in this article. Now, we've talked about Sarah Kellen Vickers, and her role and how she was the main lieutenant underneath Ghislaine Maxwell. Now we're going to meet the three assistants. Miss Groff, Mr. Epstein's executive assistant for almost 20 years, was one of the possible co-conspirators named in the 2008 plea deal Mr. Epstein's lawyers worked out with the United States Attorney's Office in Miami. Now, we talked a little bit about Leslie Groff already. We did a 20-minute episode about her a few weeks ago, maybe month and a half ago. I don't know the exact episode, but we took a little bit of a look at who she is, but we didn't really get down into the weeds yet. So again, just like with Sarah Kellen, we're going to do the same thing with Miss Groff. And this is just going to give you an overview, a basic starting point on just exactly who she is. She said in a 2005 interview with The Times that she answered Mr. Epstein's telephone and managed his schedule, which included meetings with prominent scientists, Wall Street executives, foreign dignitaries, and American politicians. Over the years, she said in 2005 that she formed a special bond with the financier, aka pedophile, anticipating his needs. I know what he is thinking, she said at the time. Again, another one who is very, very, very knowledgeable as to what went on in Jeffrey Epstein's ring. Leslie Groff was another integral part of Jeffrey Epstein's operation. She worked with Epstein for such a long time, and like she says right here, she knew what he was thinking. She was so locked in step with Epstein and knowing what he wanted that she didn't even really have to ask. She just knew what to do. And you know how you have that relationship with somebody who you've worked with for a long time? You don't really even need to discuss things. You both know what your duties are. You know what's expected of you, and you just do it. And that's the sort of a relationship these two had. Jeffrey Epstein relied on Miss Groff for a whole lot. But Miss Ransom said in her lawsuit that Miss Groff, now 53, also arranged travel and lodging for the seemingly endless stream of adolescent girls and young women who provided Mr. Epstein with erotic massages. I can confirm that as well. Sources have confirmed to me that that was the case, that these people certainly had knowledge of what was going on, of the fact that they were booking young girls to go on these flights and these trips with Jeffrey Epstein. In a recent interview with The Times, Miss Ransom said Miss Groff communicated directly with her, repeating Mr. Epstein's promises to help her obtain a fashion degree. Miss Groff's lawyer, Michael Bachner, said his client worked as part of a professional staff, making appointments, taking messages, and setting up meetings. At no time during Leslie's employment with Epstein did she ever engage in any misconduct and never knowingly made travel arrangements for anyone under 18, Mr. Bachner said. This is a great one. She worked for a professional staff that included the core four, I guess, huh? Ghislaine, Leslie, Kellen, Adriana Ross, and Nadia Marcinkova. That's the professional staff she worked with, huh? Way to go, lawyer. You absolute boob, you moron. Miss Ransom also alleged in her lawsuit that she was instructed by Mr. Epstein's associates to go on a diet and to lose about 11 pounds to maintain her slim figure. In one email exchange reviewed by The Times, Miss Ransom told Miss Groff she was monitoring her weight for Mr. Epstein. Please, could you let him know that I am going now 57 kilograms and that everything is going well, Miss Ransom emailed Miss Groff in 2007. The fact that any of these ladies, through their lawyers, would act like they don't know what's going on, that they had nothing to do with this, it's offensive at this point. It is absolutely offensive at this point. If you didn't know what was going on, you would have been the first one to come forward, Miss Groff, and help the FBI. Instead, you're hiding behind that disgusting-ass immunity deal you got. Why don't you come out from the shadows? Why don't you come out and speak to reporters? Why don't you come out and talk to me? I'll gladly have any of these core four on the podcast anytime you want to come on and explain your side of the story. Instead of skulking around in the shadows, come on, let's have a discussion. Bring your lawyer, too. Another of Mr. Epstein's assistants, Miss Ross, was also named as a potential co-conspirator in the 2008 plea deal. When Palm Beach police were investigating Mr. Epstein around 2005, Miss Ross removed 3 computers from the Florida mansion. Mr. Banasiak, the house manager, said in a deposition, Where are those computers? Where did they go? Where in the hell did those computers go, and what was on them? And how in the F did prosecutors and the police let this lady get out with those computers? How was there not around-the-clock surveillance on this man's house. How weren't those computers taken in a raid? Why was this information allowed to be taken, and where did it end up? How has she not been brought in for questioning about that? The police noted in their reports that the computers, which they had reason to think might contain photos of naked girls, were missing when investigators arrived. She showed up one day with gentlemen, Mr. Banasiak said, and she told me that they are moving out those computers. I'd like to know who gentleman is. Who is gentleman? Can we find that out? Who is the gentleman that she showed up with? And where are these computers? This is very important, folks. This is a huge piece of evidence. These computers need to be found. Miss Ross, who went on to study accounting and is based in Miami, did not respond to calls or emails seeking comment. The more you do, the more you make. Miss Marcinkova, a former model and pilot, had come under police scrutiny in Palm Beach in 2005. A 16-year-old told detectives she was giving Mr. Epstein a massage when Miss Marcinkova entered the room naked, according to Palm Beach police reports. Mr. Epstein then told the girls she could make an extra $200 if she performed oral sex on Miss Marcinkova. And the girl reluctantly agreed, the report said. Chilling. This is chilling stuff here. And again, Miss Marcinkova is supposedly somebody that Jeffrey Epstein bought when she was a youth herself. So this is another one of those cases where I believe Marcinkova deserves punishment, but to what degree, I'm torn. She has caused a lot of damage to a lot of young ladies, but she herself suffered at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein, and she was abused as well. So again, I ask the audience, what do you think should her punishment be? The encounter was the first of many sexual trysts the teenager told the police she was coerced into having with both Miss Marcinkova and Mr. Epstein at his Palm Beach mansion, according to police incident reports. Police records also show that investigators had indications that Miss Marcinkova might have been underage herself when she became involved with Mr. Epstein. That's something that we have to really get to the bottom of. We have to know for a fact one way or the other, because it's crucial when it comes time for punishment, in my opinion. I think that has to be taken into account. I know that makes me seem like kind of a softie, but if she was abused by Epstein herself, we know about the Stockholm Syndrome, and we know about the psychological effects it takes on people. And obviously, I'm not a doctor or a psychologist, so I'm not qualified to really jump in and act like I am. But the compassion in me says that somebody who was abused herself and bought from her parents in a foreign country and brought here to be a sex slave has to be looked at in a different light than, say, somebody like Sarah Kellen Vickers, who chose to be involved in this. Miss Marcinkova, who later used the last name Marchenko, declined to answer questions about Mr. Epstein's alleged abuse of girls when she was deposed in a lawsuit invoking the Fifth Amendment. Reached by the Times, Miss Marcinkova's lawyers, Erica T. Dubno and Aaron Misluiak, said, like other victims, Nadia Marcinko is and has been severely traumatized and needs time to process and make sense of what she has been through before she is able to speak out. Prosecutors may face thorny legal issues in deciding whether to charge some of Mr. Epstein's associates, like Miss Robson and Miss Marcinkova, who may have initially been victims themselves. Right. Again, it's a lot of legal gray area and moral gray area, in my opinion, as well. And I know some people will disagree with me with that, and that's totally fine. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying that these people should get off without any sort of punishment, but I believe the punishment should be much more severe for people like Leslie Groff or Adriana Ross or Sarah Kellen Vickers than it is for Marcinkova. And that's just where I'm at right now. But as we get more information, obviously, if we get more, evidence pointing in other directions, then obviously You all know how I feel about this case. I will go wherever the evidence leads us. I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm not carrying water for any side politically. In fact, I really don't care about politics anymore. Going into this, I was really engaged politically. I was involved in, following everything. But since I've started covering this Jeffrey Epstein case in October, I don't even care about the stupid tribalism that we see on a regular basis in America. I don't care anymore. It's all political noise. I want justice, and I want action in real-life cases that truly matter to the American people. That's what I want, and neither side wants to do it. Neither side wants to come forward and lead. Everybody wants to squabble, and everybody wants to throw blame and hate each other. And meanwhile, we have serious issues that are going unattended. Determining criminal liability is always a complex decision if a person has been exploited for sex, then used as a pawn to recruit others, said Lauren Hirsch, a former sex trafficking prosecutor in Brooklyn, who now leads World Without Exploitation, an anti-trafficking organization. Well, she would know way better than me, right? So I guess we should refer to what Miss Lauren Hirsch has to say here when it comes to this situation with Marcinkova and Robson. But for their own exploitation, they wouldn't do that, she said. It becomes really, really tricky. Miss Robson, a former stripper and Olive Garden worker, was not among the 4 women given immunity in the Florida plea agreement. But her role in Mr. Epstein's operation was significant enough that Palm Beach police detectives had planned to charge her more than a decade ago, according to an affidavit by the lead detective in Palm Beach. She was also sued twice, and she described her role in Mr. Epstein's operation in a deposition. When Mr. Epstein would fly into Florida, Miss Robson said she would get a call on her cell phone from Miss Kellen. That establishes the criminal conspiracy right there, folks. The criminal conspiracy, 2 or more people intent on committing a crime. Epstein, Kellen, 2 people right there. Add Robson, that's a 3rd. Can we get some RICO? Can we get some real punishment here, folks? Can we get some justice? Who would tell her how many massages the financier, pedophile, needed for the upcoming visit. The 2 of them would hammer out logistics. I would have a girl that would be available for those dates and times, Miss Robson said in a 2009 deposition. Miss Robson told lawyers she made $200 for every high school girl she brought to the Palm Beach mansion. She recruited the girls from her high school, including one who was 14. When she brought a 23-year-old, Mr. Epstein balked. Too old, he told her. Well, we all know that. They have to be young. What did Ghislaine say? She likes them nubile. Nubile is the exact word she used. Imagine to be that sick, that twisted, and that callous that you're driving around looking for girls that are nubile. So no wonder 23 was much too old for Mr. Epstein. The girls knew what they were getting into, Miss Robson said. The rules were unspoken, but understood. The more you do, the more you make, Miss Robson said in the deposition. If you were topless, if you were working in your thong, your bra, you're going to make more than 100. Oh, wow, aren't you big spenders? Aren't you just making it rain on people? Come and get sexually abused for $200. It's a great deal. You know what you're getting into. 14 years old. Absolute disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting to think that this went on for so long, with so many people turning a blind eye, so many people in polite, elite society turning a blind eye to what everybody knows was an obvious situation. Reached by the Times, Miss Robson said, "I have nothing to say. I would appreciate if I was not contacted." Douglas McIntosh, a lawyer who represented her in a civil case in Florida, called Miss Robson a lovely young lady, but declined to answer questions about her involvement with Mr. Epstein. In her deposition, Miss Robson said that she had debated suing Mr. Epstein, but decided against it. "I just thought it was the easy way out," she said, "and then I decided this is my life, and I have to take responsibility for my own actions because I did volunteer." Well, that's noble and all, but you have to face some consequences here, Miss Robson, just like Mrs. Marcinkova. The question is, what are those consequences? That's where we get into the slippery slope. That's where we get into an area where I'm certainly not qualified to even have an opinion honestly, because I don't really know. I'm really torn about it. It's one of those really hard things that I really have to think long and hard on to give you an answer one way or the other. If I was sitting on a jury, I don't know how I'd have to listen to all of the evidence, and I'd have to really think long and hard about how I would punish someone who has been bought from a different country, from their parents, and brought here and groomed for this role. It's just one of those really slippery slopes. So folks, that concludes episode 1 of our closer look Jeffrey Epstein's Core 4 series. We're going to have 4 more episodes in this series, and the first episode is going to deal with Sarah Kellen Vickers. And that was going to be today's episode, but unfortunately I decided that, well, I guess not unfortunately, that's the wrong word, but I decided that the overview episode was more important for context. So what we're going to do is the Sarah Kellen Vickers episode will be on Saturday. Now, I would do it on Friday, but Friday is my 40th birthday. So I'll be predisposed on that day, hanging out with my family and, just relaxing a little bit. I'll have the usual out for the podcast, the usual 2 episodes, but the second episode of this series will not be out until Saturday. And that episode will be all about Sarah Kellen Vickers, and we'll pick up right where we left off here in her story. So now everyone who just started listening to the podcast, and everybody even who has been listening, you got a refresher course, and all of the new folks who are listening got an idea of what exactly we're talking about when we talk about the 4 horsemen. I mean the core 4. So now that we're all up to date, moving forward, nobody will have any problems understanding who these ladies are as we move the series forward. All right, folks, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. If you would like to follow me on Twitter, you can do that at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. If you enjoy my content and you would like to help out the podcast, you can click on the GoFundMe link that's inside of the description box. All right, folks, I'll be back tomorrow with the usual morning update and, like usual, the daily drop. Everybody enjoy your Wednesday night, and I will speak with you in the morning.
At the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in Los Angeles, we know you're more than just a student. You're a catalyst for change and an advocate for those in need. And we believe you deserve more. So your faculty are accomplished professionals. Your classroom is the real world. And the support you need is available when you need it. You're more than a student. Get more from your education. Learn more about the Chicago School's Los Angeles campus today at thechicagoschool.edu. At the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in Los Angeles, we know you're more than just a student. You're a catalyst for change and an advocate for those in need. And we believe you deserve more. So your faculty are accomplished professionals. Your classroom is the real world. And the support you need is available when you need it. You're more than a student. Get more from your education. Learn more about the Chicago School's Los Angeles campus today at thechicagoschool.edu.